Hi, I'm Dave Packer with Druva, and today we're going to talk about Druva's unique approach to encryption utilizing our two-factor encryption model. What I'm going to do is contrast this with some of the more common encryption models utilized by cloud service providers. And in doing so, we're going to use three criteria. One is security, really how well is your data protected from unauthorized access. The second one is data privacy, which is really about if we think about things like the NSA PRISM program or your data being subpoenaed from a cloud provider, how easily accessible your data is and how it can be produced or handed over to a third party without your knowledge. And then thirdly is around manageability. How easy is it to manage this mechanism, manage the keys, and so that you're not thinking about it on a constant basis and thinking about things like key rotation and expirations and things like that. And so, first model that we see most commonly used is where your key is stored alongside your data. And in doing so, what happens is that key is stored in a database. When an end user authenticates, they get the key. Now they can encrypt and decrypt data as it moves in and out of the cloud. From a security standpoint, the main challenge with this, and it's one question we get from a lot of folks about kind of where are the keys stored, is that if somebody breaches the system, they might get access to all the keys and therefore access to all the underlying data within the system. And so traditionally what we say is that this is okay for personal use or the way maybe less secure model of storing data, but really not that great for an enterprise. And so we usually wouldn't consider this one of the best security mechanisms to use for protecting enterprise data. The second is around data privacy. And I think it's pretty obvious with the way the key is stored and the way the data is stored that if there was an investigation or the government wanted to access your data or there was a legal subpoena for your data, that data could be divulged. And so we would say that this isn't a very private mechanism. And what we've also found in these implementations, a lot of times the service provider is actually scanning the data before it gets encrypted or when it's unencrypted or decrypted and having visibility into it. So, but what we say is from a manageability standpoint, it actually works pretty well. The second evolution is really what we call key escrow, and this is where the key is stored within some type of a third-party provider. And when an end user authenticates, the key is requested from the third-party provider, it's pulled over, and now it's utilized for encrypting and decrypting your data. One of the advantages is that from an overall security standpoint, it adds in an extra layer of security. So a data breach, for example, might not provide that access to that key. People won't be able to then decrypt your information and get hold of it. So from a security standpoint, it's fairly secure. From a data privacy standpoint, though, it suffers from the same issue here. Escrow doesn't protect your data from the standpoint of an investigation or some type of a litigation request for your data. So it's not really what we consider a very private solution. But from a manageability standpoint, it is a good solution because the key is easily managed. You don't have to think about it and some of the other challenges around managing keys that some organizations deal with. The third model that we see utilized a lot is utilizing a key server. And in this model, what happens is the server is actually something that you bring on premise inside your organization. It manages the keys, and it offers a very high level of security because a breach of the cloud service provider system, they can't get to the keys. It's very private because, again, the cloud service provider doesn't have access to those keys, and so there's no way for them to access that data. So you get good security and definitely good privacy. The challenge is a manageability standpoint. When you have an on-premise key server, what that means is now I have to manage it. I have to make sure that it's backed up, that it's redundant, that there's some type of failover. One of the challenges with key server model is that if that key server goes down, none of my employees now have access to their data anymore. So it creates a little bit of a fail point inside of an organization, though it does provide the security. And so a lot of organizations will go, oh, I can do this, I can manage it. But it does kind of undermine the whole purpose of having a cloud system, which is to have all that information stored in the cloud as much as possible. So Druva's approach is what we call two-factor encryption. It's a little bit of a different model, and the idea is how do we take the best of all these different models and mix them together in a way that allows you to have the most security, the best privacy, and also the manageability that you really want out of these simpler models. The way that we do this is pretty unique. What we do is when you create an account inside of Druva is we generate a unique key for your data. But we never store that key. Actually, what we do is we encrypt that key using the admin or end user credentials. And what that does is result in a token. And that token is actually what gets stored alongside the encrypted data in the cloud. So that means the token's encrypted, your data's encrypted. When you think about it from that standpoint, it definitely delivers the security you want because there's no way to access that data. All authorizations managed by the administrator and the end user's access to that information. From a privacy standpoint, we as Druva don't have any access to that information. We can't take that key, we can't unencrypt your data, we can't hand it off to anybody. Anybody who wants that data has to go directly through you. And so that's a big advantage because that makes sure that you're always in the loop about who has access and visibility to your data. So definitely from a visibility and privacy standpoint, very strong. And then from a manageability standpoint, because of the way that we're handling it and because we're not using a key server model, you get the advantage of having that information and those keys managed the way that you want to. And so it delivers that very simple model of key manageability, but also the security and privacy that you really want. And so the goal of two-factor encryption is to really keep that data protected as much as possible. And that's why when we engage with a lot of large enterprises that traditionally have looked at kind of private cloud or storing data on-premise, they've gone towards this model because it gives them those advantages, allows them to have the efficiencies of cloud storage, but also the security and privacy they're looking for. So that gives you the general idea of the various key models and why we use our two-factor encryption model for protecting data in the cloud. If you have more questions or want to learn more about Druva, go visit druva.com and look through our resources section, and you can find lots of information about how we implement security and encryption to protect your data in the cloud.